So good afternoon. We're going to change the conversation a little bit and talk about work, purpose, and society, which is an absolutely fascinating topic. I'm delighted to have 4 experts in the room to talk about this. And we're going to focus on the changing demographics and purpose at work, building an inclusive corporate culture, and private and public partnerships, and how all of these actually are issues that we need to address for Hong Kong today. In the beginning of the talk, Sandra said, we do need to talk, we need to provoke thinking, and we need to listen to one another. So I'm going to use this as a conversation with my 4 panelists and engage them in a conversation on this topic. So with us, I have John Killian, Group Financial Officer for the Hong Kong Exchange. Elaine Tsung, founder and CEO of Garage Society. Philippa Vizzone, co-head for Asia Pacific Equity Research at Goldman Sachs. And Dr. Vivian Lo, director of Sao Paulo Center on Aging. So, start the question. Purpose is a really big word. It's been banding about. It's been in the marketplace for a while. Let's put a framework around it because it has different definitions for different people and across different cultures. So what I'd like you to do is I'm going to start off by asking you, what does purpose mean to you, as succinctly as possible?
Coincidentally, for the first time in a century, HKEX this year sat down and asked that question of the company. And we actually came out with a purpose this year, which I'd like to share with you, to promote and progress our financial markets and the communities they support. That portion, that end portion, the communities that they support, was really key for us because we wanted to make sure that we're connecting our employees into the local community, and that was the most important aspect, as opposed to the high-level save the planet type thing, which is a little bit harder to resonate at a granular level. But for me, I actually think about it more about finding my why. I don't use the term purpose, and it's really just about what motivates me, why do I get up in the morning, what do I want to achieve in life. And if I can find my why, I get a lot of motivation and to progress. But then I also translate that to my staff and find their why. So if I can link your why to the organization's why, then I'm going to have a pretty happy, healthy, motivated employee and just get a lot better result. You can't always necessarily pay everybody what they want, but at least if you can align their interests to the organization's goals, then you can get a lot greater outcome.
Thank you. Elaine?
Yeah, I think John has already given a really good idea about the whys of lives. For me, as an entrepreneur, I think how I would define my purpose is what drags me out of bed in the morning with a light heart, even though I'm not being paid a lot. Like, I've been through the corporate world and I've enjoyed multiple careers in my life. There are times that I got paid pretty well, but I really didn't want to get up, and I had to drag myself out because I have a job to do as a responsible professional. But deep down, I knew it wasn't my calling to be doing certain jobs I had done before. So in the past couple of years, since I've started becoming an entrepreneur, looking into what businesses I can build, I purposely look for things that I can do as an individual, and by building up a business that can help make the world a slightly better place.
Nice. Thank you. Philippa?
So I think I've been listening to too many TED Talks because I immediately thought of Maslow's hierarchy of needs and self-actualization, and I'm like, well, this is a pretty self-actualized crowd here. In some ways, when we do these, we preach to the choir, right? You guys all believe, which is why you're sitting here. So I thought, what is my purpose today? And I work for an organization, I work for Goldman Sachs, and I think they're pretty progressive. I think they're very forward-thinking about diversity and helping women along the way. I know, I've benefited, I've been there 19 years. And so rather than preaching to the choir, I just sort of come here today as a purpose to share some of the things that I think they do well. And, if that helps the broader conversation, that's great. That's my purpose today.
Thank you. Vivian.
For me, purpose refers to a sense of determined goal that with all the passion and compassion. So as a director of Sopo Center on Aging, our purpose is to empower the community, the family, and the individual to achieve their optimal quality of life, regardless of their health, their wealth, and their age. That is the most important thing, because our goal and our really, determined is to support each older adult to achieve their quality of life.
Nice. So we wrap that up. We had individual. I think I heard what makes you get up in the morning, get out of bed. We also had a society impact, a community impact, and finding my why. So that's a nice structure to put on purpose. At least it's not a lofty idea that we don't know what we're talking about. So and maybe all of you can think about that'll be your next question, to turn to the person and say, what's my purpose? So let me link that now to Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock. Larry Fink caused a stir in the business community by publishing a letter about to all CEOs saying, look, you need to link your business models to purpose and profit. And so we just talked about individual and community and society. So John, what do you think about Fink's proposal, and how do you embed purpose within a strategy of an organization?
Larry's 3 major points to start with was to say, your boards, okay, they need to be powerful, strong, independent, challenging, supportive. And if you know our board, we're in a great situation there. I feel like I have 12 mentors helping me on every given day. The amount of time and energy that they spend with management is fantastic. Strategy, we produce a strategy, 3-year strategy, and go in a tremendous amount of detail about that. That's all fine. The purpose was the difficult point, and I had just mentioned that we had sat down this year, just by coincidence, it wasn't based off of his letter, but we actually said, we need to define our purpose, which I just defined to you, and then how do you embed that into the individuals? So what we did was we went around and interviewed all the employees. We have 2,000 employees. We went around and we said, give us the values that you want for us to define the company with. And they came up with 5, okay? And the 5 is integrity, diversity, excellence, collaboration, and engagement. And so it was like a battle royal. I think there was 200 words thrown in there. I suggested punctuality, but it was... it got downvoted to oblivion, but, and then, so the 5, was very important because it came bottom up. It wasn't from me top down, otherwise it would have been punctuality, frugality. And it didn't come from Madison Avenue either. But then after that, we said, okay, what are the behaviors underneath that? And underneath each of those 5 words, we have all the behaviors that our staff are meant to show, and to call it out if you don't demonstrate that behavior to people, and that started to happen. And then the last thing we just did to really motivate people is we created CE Awards, funded by the CFO, of course, which is for you to call out the right behaviors and Charles will give awards to those people in the organization or teams in the organization that are demonstrating those values. So it's really getting that down to the actual behaviors. So we just started this year, and optimistic, but I hope that actually is the right path. And I think I'm open to hearing from the crowd about maybe their experience in other ways we could do it. But I'll report back next year on how successful we are in that.
Yeah, with your why or your purpose driver. The bottom-up approach is fascinating, so we can dig a little bit deeper into that. But Pippa, does this sense of purpose extend into society? And what I mean by that is we're here looking at gender equality. So does a business have a role in advancing this beyond its own company doors?
Yeah, absolutely. So I run equity research for Goldman, and we actually do some research on this. Our ESG teams have done some research. And the view is pretty simple. You need to be responsible to your entire stakeholder base. And that includes the community. It includes ESG metrics. If you don't, you build risk in your business. If you're in the fourth quartile, if you do it well in the first quartile, you'll deliver outperformance, both in profitability and returns, and ultimately, share price performance, if that's how you're measured by your shareholders. And so there is actually an economic imperative here. At Goldman, we believe in that economic imperative as it relates to gender and the importance of building that into our stakeholders, whether it's our clients, whether it's our shareholders, whether it's our employees, or the broader community at large. On the gender side, we want to mirror our client base. That's an economic imperative for us. There's two other ways I think about this. One is, what can we as an organization do to help support that imperative? So we've created different programs that have been running for some time now, where we feel like we can use our specialist skills to really pull the conversation ahead and put our money where our mouth is. So let me give you one example. The VCs, women get 5 cents on the dollar relative to men, women entrepreneurs. And so we wanted to change that equation. And so we launched Launch at GS, which is $500 million of committed capital to female entrepreneurs. Now, you can't just commit capital. That's not enough. So then what we said was, we've got to apply our time and our skills, our own skills, to help these women entrepreneurs and help them build their business. And when they build their ecosystems, greater good for the community. So that's one example.
Yeah, and a great example, because it impacts the whole ecosystem. So it's not just about money, but it's about the purpose-driven of an impact on society. Elaine, you've been on the forefront, a little bit shifting style from purpose, but I think there's a link to purpose. So you've been on the forefront of leading the co-working space, co-working lifestyle. And what was your inspiration behind building your most recent venture, Garage Society? And has this work concept been more appealing to women, or are you seeing an even split between both genders?
As I just shared in the beginning, when I started out building my recent business, I have a notion in mind is what can I do as a business which is commercially sustainable. It's important, but at the same time, something that can help contribute a bit to the society. So out of multiple businesses I can choose from, I've decided to go for a real estate enhancement service business, which broadly is categorized as co-working nowadays. The reason why we think co-working might be an interesting start, it's because it provides an ecosystem for opportunities. If you look at, or might be talking a bit more about the capital world, but we might be looking at times that younger people, given technology, they have a lot more opportunities to build something. And these opportunities we might not be able to see, it might be 10, 15 years ago, because at my time, that was the time I graduated from university, and most likely career options will be corporate world, investment banking, lawyers or doctors. But we realize that now is a good time for young people who has the vision to build something interesting, and how ourselves as a business operator can facilitate the movement. It's maybe by building an ecosystem with flexible workspaces, with education partners, with investment funding, with all sorts of program enrichment to help younger businesses to get started. So that was how we wanted to do it at the beginning. We did not exactly have gender equality on top of our head, but we want to do something which is for the betterment of the society. But actually, once we started doing it in the region, really interesting, we started seeing this flexible concept being very welcomed by female entrepreneurs, especially for the fact that, as I shared, it's flexible workspaces. Well, still, I would say it's unfortunate, but we still see in Asia there's a lot of homestaying females because they might be mothers, they have a lot of obligations at home. Because I realized that just now when we did the vote, a lot of people say we need better equality at home. And yeah, a lot of times, a lot of mothers or female, they will be more engaged at home, and then they want to take our system, our flexible workspaces, our opportunities, our community infrastructure to start building something without having the obligation to go to work 9 to 5. So this is how afterwards we realized that actually female founders, female entrepreneurs actually has started showing up a lot more in our spaces in the region, Hong Kong, and actually around Asia.
So you didn't set out, like gender equality you didn't set out for that, but you're seeing a rise in more women in working spaces.
Yeah, we realized that we've become kind of an ecosystem of different opportunities that people can take advantage of by building something themselves.
So I can see an opportunity for Goldman Sachs to have some VC events there. We'll go back to that later. So turning back to Fink, he also noted, and I think we were kind of addressing these issues, that societies are increasingly turning to companies for solutions. And this is the pressing issue on social and economic issues, which we see everywhere, not just Hong Kong, across the world, right? And so we're starting to see more of innovative private and public partnerships. So this is going to be for Pippa and John. What does this collaboration look like, and what sort of impact can it have?
Okay, so look, Asia is the home of public-private partnerships, whether it's sort of Belt and Road or it's, the toll roads in China. Think about, all the infrastructure that's being built, the ports that are being built. So, the foundations of Asia has been public-private partnership. I wanted to bring it a little closer to home to something that we've been doing for some time. Again, another program that has just been so invaluable for the employees that I work with in terms of their ability to invest and change the outcomes here. And that's 10,000 Women. So 10,000 Women is a public-private partnership project with Goldman, where we team up with academics and we team up with not-for-profit charities to find women entrepreneurs. And that's generally in emerging markets. So it's operating in India, for example. It's operating in China, for example. 50,000 entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, have been through this program. They've cycled through this program. And in doing so, they have built communities, they've built revenue opportunities for themselves, they've built employment practices for the communities around them. So, an enormous benefit that's broad in its outreach, and that started with just that one grain of public-private partnership. So an example of how we can do it ourselves. We didn't need to wait for someone to do it for us. We've partnered with the IFC to launch a global finance facility that, again, commits that capital that's necessary to support the sustained resourcing that you need for these partnerships to flourish. And the point I can make is those dollars have a significant multiplier effects in the broader communities in which we live. A critical, important point.
Yeah, great example of public-private partnership, and also particularly, like you mentioned, the IFC connection to it too. John?
I was going to use 10,000 Women. So
but you're at the
she stole that,
exchange.
because the first example I saw of that was a Mongolian woman in her traditional dress who had set up the company, and I was in tears by the time she was done. But somebody like myself, she was a creative person, has a great idea, is trying to be successful. I happen to be the numbers guy. I can teach people about budgets. I can teach people how the numbers work and get them to be, sustain their business, et cetera. How else can you really do that unless you get out there and start partnering? because I don't think, just use any example, I would be surprised if anybody in the room would say the country that you came from, actually gets it done right? So they need, even if a government has the best intentions of the world, they need the people like ourselves to really get out there and make things happen. And so I won't add anything more than those great examples. So.
Thank you. You can't talk about 10,000 women because you're at the exchange. Vivian, we're going to shift a little bit look at aging population. So Hong Kong research indicates that in 40 years, a third of the population will be over 65. So 40 years might think, oh, that's a bit of time, but this is going to have an impact on employees and employers. And what's the role should business play in meeting the challenges of an aging society?
The aging is a big issue. I think I would bring 3 R's today to share. The first one is recognize aging is a fact. So people, because I study aging for over 20 years, so people ask me, oh, what is the problem? Then what is the solution? I said, no, there's no problem, so there's no solution at all. So what we should do is recognize aging is a phenomenon that everybody would experience. So this is the first, the change of the whole mindset, and do not regard aging as a problem. So this is the recognized issue, the first R. The second is to revisit the policy agenda on work, learning, and the retirement. We must revisit this agenda, because in the old traditional societies, we think, okay, we should study for 18 years, that's free of charge, supported the government, and then work for 30 years, and then retire for some years. So when the retirement age first comes, introduced by the Germany society, and then people died after a few years after they retired. But now, if we still introduce that age in terms of retirement, we are going to live for as long as 30 years, after you retire. So that means we do have to revisit. So what does it mean? Live longer, and how we can revisit it and revolutionarily include this phenomenon into our business sector. And then the third R is reskilling. When in the traditional societies, we study for 18 years, and then the skills, the competence we learn are sufficient enough to sustain us for our work and also for our retirement. But now it doesn't make sense, because you have to work 20-something years, 30-something years, and then you retire for 20-something years, 30-something years, and then every one of us should reskill in this technology world. I think every one of us, regardless of age, regardless of gender, we should learn AI, right? So every one of us should learn, what does it mean, artificial intelligence? What will be the world look like if we become a society that we are going to share our ecology with all these artificial intelligence? So what will be the future of business or business sector or our ecology? That will be very challenging questions, but I think it is really worthwhile for us to think about today rather than tomorrow.
So the next session is going to be on how do we navigate with artificial intelligence, but we'll have that conversation later. I want to bring this back now, the aging society and the impact it has on employees. So I'm going to link this to Pippa and John. Most of the responsibilities for caregivers fall on women across the globe. And what are some of the best practices that you've seen or of maybe inside your organizations that helps you advance female employees who are responsible for care responsibilities? Got it.
I want to tackle this one because I, in finance, actually typically start, in every team that I've run, 60% women, typically 40% men. But actually I have a specific experience. I hired 2,000 people in the Philippines, 1,900 of which were women. And I had to get this right or I would fail. And so, but I think what's shocking to me even to this day is if you don't feel comfortable, you can raise your hand. How many women that have had male bosses, how many of them have really personal conversations with you about your personal home life and what that situation is like? Anybody? Oh, okay, a couple that have decent bosses in there. Oh, good. You have to go individual by individual. You have to ask very personal questions about the on-ramping. Does somebody want to come back from, let's say, a maternity leave, and do they want to be 110%, or is it 15%? What is it? So through these deep personal conversations about somebody, you find out, guess what? Morning meetings, breakfast meetings don't work, right? Then you also find out that, that drinking every night with clients, that actually doesn't work either, right? And then you start realizing that there's this whole organizational bias, and it may be even a whole market bias to why this problem exists, and you have to just simply stop it, okay? And then you move the meetings to the middle of the day, and you work out a plan for every single one of your staff. And then you find out also the technology components, work from home, et cetera, and then you go back and address those issues. But you have to go one by one by one. And the only way to do that as a manager is then to connect very closely to your employees. And you'd be surprised at how many of my male managers come back to me and say, she's back from maternity leave and it's all great, and 6 months later they quit. So I personally do it myself. And then I go back and I teach my managers how to have these conversations. You can see the discomfort that the men and bosses have these conversations. And I find out about mother-in-laws. I find out about, useless husbands. You name it. But you've got to get out there and address these at a very individual and a deep level. But it's absolutely achievable.
Thank you.
So let me depress you. So we wrote a report on this earlier this year around closing the gender gaps, and this related to the US rather than to Asia. But as a result of what we call the downshift, so the periods in which we off-ramp largely for maternity, for caregiving, where we need that bit of flexible time, where we need additional travel time, where we need additional time for ourselves and our families, that downshift causes permanent irreparable damage to the aggregate financial returns of the caregiver. And let me size it for you. It's about 20% on aggregate of lifetime earnings, which in the US translates to about $500,000 US. Okay. So if there's one thing you can take away from this today, think about those downshifts from two perspectives. One, when someone's downshifting and then they need to re-shift upwards, are you putting them back on the right trajectory? Or are you thinking in your framework, oh, there's someone that needs flexible time, therefore I'll keep them in a lower position, or I won't give them the level of responsibility that they need. I won't allow them to ramp up again. The second is, the biggest cause in terms of female dilution to senior level populations is not the attrition, it's the rehiring. We dilutively rehire. So when you think about going out to hire senior people, please always put at least 2 diverse candidates, and I mean diverse, it doesn't have to be gender diverse, put 2 diverse candidates in your population pool that you are interviewing to give yourself the best opportunity, the best chance to rehire without being dilutive to the senior women.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the aging discrimination, we don't, or aging population, we don't dig too deeply and we don't think a lot about the care responsibilities. And I know research indicates that's a hindrance both for women. We're running short on time, so what I'd like to do is I'm going to have it, well, I would like you to share with the audience. We started out on purpose and what it meant to you. there is this huge movement towards purpose, and you explained it from an organizational perspective in your organization, and actually the work that you do in the Aging Society is huge. If you were to give one piece of advice to the audience here on individually, regardless of level or tenure or where you are, what would be that one piece of advice for the individuals in the room to find their purpose, whether that be at work or whether that be in the broader society? Who wants to go first?
Okay, I'll try. I think it's important to really listen to yourself. When I started out, I was sharing what business I want to do that I think it's fulfilling for me as far as a purpose goes. And that's so much that I care about, maybe at times too much. But really think what matters to you most, because this is what's going to get you out of bed, even if, well, at least I was not paid before. And if you think that really matters for you, then go for it. And the other thing is do it sustainably, and don't think it's because I can't do much. One thing I hear a lot is people say, hey, I can't make too much impact. There's so much so time I have, there's so much so money I have, that's only me. But it all starts small, and believe in yourself, do it sustainably. There will always be a ripple effect. If you believe in something, you started doing it, your friends might do it, and if we all do it, then we can actually do it together as to change the future. It's impossible until it's done, or I would say it's possible because it can be done.
Fabulous. Vivian, I want to go to you. I think we should.
I would say be always reflective. Every morning be reflective on, it's so blessed that I wake up and I still have my breath and I can contribute to myself as well as my family and the community. And every night before I go to bed, because I have my religion, so I pray, and then I do show my appreciation for everything. So that is the connection. We always be connected and reflective.
Nice. Thank you. Pippa.
If what I've learned in a 19-year career is this, it's hold yourself accountable.
Wonderful. John, wrap it up.
Okay. I think they hit it. But what I was going to say about finding your why was about listening to yourself, but it really kind of asking that why. It really takes about 5 whys to get there. Why? Have you ever noticed that sometimes you do things and then time flies and hours go by and you just don't even realize that? Well, what are those jobs that you've had or things that you've done that you really just excelled at and you didn't even think about it? And other times you might be working a lot of hours, you might be getting paid a lot of money, and you're absolutely miserable. Why is that? Why? You'll actually kind of really come to quite an understanding there that there's probably something in there that really drives you and really motivates you, and then the things that also really turn you off and really demotivate you and sap all of your energy. You just have to get that balance right and really push towards the things that make the time fly. The last I'd say, before we go, is just that I think it's hard to just give one piece of advice. So what I always offer when I have these things is I've helped a lot of people as a mentor, but I'm actually more of a sponsor, which means I'm an active mentor, which is if you want me to help with your career, with your with your life, and you want to touch upon these topics, just feel free to reach out. My assistant knows that there's I need my coffee, and I prefer to talk when I have my coffee. So please just reach out, and I think the panel likewise is very accessible, so it doesn't have to stop here.
Thank you. And I just want to end with an appreciation. Thank you. Let's appreciate.